I'm joined today with Krisztina Szarvas, who started her career in the corporate world, having an international career for over 15 years. She was responsible for marketing, B2B education, business development, and more for the Central Eastern Europe area, the Balkan and Asia. That's quite a broad geographic area. After this, she jumped by chance into entrepreneurship, advising, and she took over several companies and also started new ones. So we will hear from at least two of those, being Magnet 2000 and Network. Thank you so much for joining me today, Krisztina. It's lovely having you here.
Thank you for having me on board.
Thank you. And I guess I'm sure I've probably missed a lot from my introduction of you. Is there anything else you wanted to add and how you jumped into the entrepreneurship space from coming from a very international background?
Yeah, so basically I always was thinking about launching my own company. It just always sounded exciting for me.
Yeah.
So I was in the literature, I followed conferences, and I followed people, opinion leaders and in the area. But basically, I had a nice career in the corporate world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of the people jump out of the corporate world when they are frustrated for whatever reason. And that point didn't come to me back then.
Oh, wow.
I had a nice career, I earned a lot, I had a lot of responsibility, and as I was moving upwards on the corporate ladder, I could take the decisions, so it was not frustrating like me. And so it was really by chance, because a close relative died in the family who was running business, and I was at that time on maternity leave.
Oh, wow.
So it was obvious that I should be the one in the family who takes care about the business.
Yeah.
With the experience and with let's say, a lot of time. It was not a lot of time, but
looking after a newborn, yes.
Yeah, it's considered. And so I jumped in because the company had also funding, European Union funding. It was a part of the consortium, so we couldn't quit so easy.
Yeah.
At least that project had to be finished.
For sure.
Because otherwise you have to pay back the money, which was invested already.
Yeah.
Things. So there was not a lot of option, but take over and do it till the end, or at least at the end of the project.
Wow. Before we dive into it, what was this company, and had you been involved in it prior to this unfortunate circumstance?
It was a medical company.
Mm-hmm.
The person was a doctor.
Okay.
And she was running this company. So I knew a few things about the company itself, but it's always different looking from
the outside.
As an outsider, yes, and when you are in. And when I jumped in, it turned out that it was there was not a lot of structure and system in the company. It was more like she was working in the company, not on the company. She was having this company in order to have a legal entity and to be able to invoice things.
Okay, so she was a practicing doctor.
Yeah, she was a practicing doctor, and she enjoyed more that part than the business administration.
Which is quite typical, yeah.
Yes. So that was the most difficult part, to give structure to the whole activities.
Yes.
And so it was really by chance. But as I was always thinking about it, I took the challenge and jumped in.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you juggle jumping in? I guess you mentioned that there was a ongoing, partnership with the European Union. How long was left on that contract, and what did that involve? I guess because she was a doctor and now it's you and you're not a doctor, how did you manage the delivery of that?
It was a 2 years project, and more than half a year was still ahead of us.
Okay.
I think it was 7-8 months, something like that, still to finish the project. And it was an emergency call system, so that for elderly people, so that when they feel bad and they are alone, they push a button and then someone goes and helps them.
Oh, wow.
So that was, I think that was a serious game, so to say. But we were, it has been working for 1.5 years. So I expected it to work out for the rest of the few months. So this was not that I had to start it from scratch.
For sure.
But still, it was a lot of responsibility because it was about life of elderly people. So if you don't do your service properly, then they might die or something like that. And then that's the worst outcome, yeah.
For sure. When you say it was a system, was it a text system that they interacted with, or was it a physical button? How did it look like?
The system, I mean the operational side. So what
Right.
happens when you get a call? Who
Okay.
is jumping in? Who is helping?
Right.
You have a certain response time. You have to be there. And how does this all work? And also
Okay.
in the company, who is doing what? And how do new customers come? And what happens with new customers? It was everything improvising, so to say.
Right. That sounds quite complicated. How many staff members were involved in this company?
I think there were 6 people.
Okay.
Plus the doctors, because the doctors were not employed. They were on external contract
Yep.
for different tasks. Because typically it was in Hungary, and back then, and I don't know if it's still valid today, but back then people were, especially doctors, were working at 6-7 different places, hospital and privately, and so they were not always employed everywhere, but they were contractors.
Okay, that makes
to
sense.
manage,
Yeah, and important context is that this was in Budapest.
It was in Budapest, yes.
Yeah. So was it sort of looking at the entire city or part of the city? What was the geographic remit of the business?
It was the entire city.
Wow.
It was the entire city, yes. But of course, she was clever enough. She tried to. I mean, the surface was the whole city.
Yeah.
But of course, she tried to get customers from the closer area, which is easier to manage. You know,
Definitely.
It depends also on you where you get customers. And she was focusing on the area, where the location itself was. So. More or less, it was manageable. Yes.
Okay. Wow. That sounds really tricky.
Yeah. And in worst case, if you have really emergency, then you had to call the ambulance.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Doctor. Yeah.
For sure.
Because in first case, only assistants went to
the first
emergency
responders.
place. Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, for me, the most difficult thing at this company was to set up really a system, because when you come from the corporate world, you are used to systems. Everything is working in systems, and whatever you change, you change a system.
You do.
And if there is no system at all, you have to begin it from scratch. Yeah. So that was difficult for me, just to start from scratch, so to say, even if the company was already running.
Yeah.
But and the second thing was, what was for me difficult there, it was the HR part.
Okay.
Because if you are working in the corporate world, then you are, at least I was used to working with professionals.
Yes.
So even if they were young professionals, they were professionals and very ambitious.
Yes.
Yeah? If you're not ambitious, you don't get into the corporate world. And so it was only to hand over knowledge and skills and experience. And here at the small company, there were people who had, for example, personal conflicts with each other, and that took a lot of time.
Right.
And it was also difficult to get new people on board, to find the right people. Earlier, HR did it for me, and now I had to find from scratch everyone fitting to that environment. And really that personal conflict took a lot of time. Of course, there was a lot of stress because of the change, because of the situation. People felt uncertain if they can keep their job or not. So that's not the normal situation, so to say. And it evolved a lot of feelings from them. And then even about small things, they were just fighting with each other. And also, if I compare it to the corporate world, for example, there was one person for the office. She was a very bureaucratic person, but she was really good taking care about compliance and everything like that.
Yeah.
There was another person, for example, a medical assistant. He was kind of a salesy person, not really taking care so much about the administration. And so they also fight it with each other. And in the corporate world, it's normal that sales and the bureaucracy is a little bit opposing each other. You don't take it personally. It's normal because they have different goals and ambitions and different duties, so to say. And they are sometimes conflicting, and that's okay. You have to find it. But here in this everything was smaller, and I considered it as a conflict of bureaucracy and sales, but they considered it as conflict between X and Y, and took it to the personal level. And I was, for me, it was new. I was still very young. I didn't have, my children were very small. That if you get children and they grow up and then you develop a lot of leadership skills.
Yeah, people management
because
skills.
you can't fire them, so to say, if you have a conflict with them or if they have
I've never thought about it that way. Yeah, that's true.
So you have to learn to improve your own skills
Yes.
to handle situations. And I didn't have those skills back then. And in the corporate world, it was not an issue. Really, everyone was really passionate. Everyone wanted to move forward.
Yeah, you were professional. You brought your best self to work.
Yeah. It's just like if you consider it like a university, teaching in a university and in a grammar school. It's just different.
Very different.
Yeah, it's very different. So you have to learn different skills to run that kind of business. Yeah,
definitely. What a fascinating whirlwind, because most people go into startups, entrepreneurship by choice. They are passionate about a business, they start it, and they're kind of aware of the challenges ahead. But for you, you have a brand new baby, and then you're kind of thrown into something that wasn't your creation, and then you have to manage and also be HR, and I guess also learn how the operational components work and the compliance. So it sounds like that was a lot.
Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah, back then. But I mean, you grow only if you have a lot on your shoulders. So it helps true. Also. Challenges are also fine things if you overcome them, so to say.
For sure. I guess after you started to get a handle on the HR and the people and hiring the right people, how did it progress? Did it get to a stable point for the rest of the contract, or?
It got to the stable point, but I recognized that I will be not able to grow the business.
Okay.
That was the reason I sold it, because I was pretty much missing one medical person, faculty, who could run the creative part of. I mean, I could do the operational part of the business itself, but I would have needed someone who is a doctor, who is dealing with that part, who's hiring new doctors if someone is quitting.
Yeah.
And I didn't find someone back then. There was a challenge to find doctors. Everyone was moving abroad because they were not well paid in Hungary. So a lot of doctors left the country, and many of them. It's completely different occupation. So most of them are not interested in doing business. It's very far from their.
They're mostly employees, I guess.
So they prefer to being employees and they would like to heal people. Not run business. Most of them. Those who wanted to run a business, they did their own business already. Back then, there were already many private service companies, So those did, and so there was a scarcity on doctors, and especially on creative doctors.
Right.
Let's say, for example, that person who ran the business before, she was very creative. So, for example, she knew where are, for example, wait lists in the state system. So where are new opportunities for running the business? If she knew that there is a wait list, then she set up a service for that. I didn't know that. I was not in the state system, so to say.
Yeah.
So, for example, there was one occasion I organized a teaser campaign, and we got 200 new customers.
Oh, wow.
We did for them allergy testing. And so then we were brainstorming, okay, what's next? How do we sell them our regular services? Because basically a teaser is just you do the basic price so that you don't have much loss, but it's not profitable. And so they said, we will think about that. I mean, think about that. And after 2 weeks, we will think about that.
And just didn't go anywhere.
We lost. I mean, there was no reason.
That's a shame.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand them. They were working in a lot of hospitals. They were exhausted. They liked the healing part. I really would have needed someone who is, So I think that was the main reason why I thought I should sell this.
Okay.
I shouldn't do this. It's just struggling. If I don't find anyone who can be the counterparty, the other party is running the medical part, then it doesn't make sense.
No. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. How did you go about selling the business? What was that process like? Because often that's not shared, I guess.
Yeah, that was also a challenge. I tried to sell it as it is, as a whole.
Okay.
But I didn't manage, because most of the other companies were privately owned, smaller companies back then. They were not big companies like nowadays.
When you say back then, what year was this?
It was 15 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And so no one wanted, and also they saw a lot of risks. So in those other companies, they were not experienced in company valuation, how to see the value of a company, what price to pay for it. So I cut everything into pieces. I sold the customer base to a doctor, then I sold the real estate to someone else. And then finally, when the company was completely empty, I sold the company itself, the company name, because it had a long heritage with a clean taxation history, and that was also value.
What do you mean clean taxation?
That it was always paying the tax.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah. So we were really, we paid always the tax. It was everything clean with the bookkeeping. Everything was fine. And that has also value if you have a company the company was, I think, 15 years old, 10 years old itself.
Yeah.
Running smoothly without any authority issues. And that seemed to be also a value.
Yeah, to people. And so the person who bought it just kept the name, and do they also inherit the track record?
That was also learning, because the person who bought the company name, the company itself, changed the name, changed the activities of the company completely, something wholesale. And then I learned later that they made a big cheating on taxing, because I was called by the authorities later to make some statements. It was not on my shoulder,
of course,
but they still asked who was that, and I didn't know much about them. The company was empty, so I didn't care who's buying the company. And that's when I learned that the company name with a clean taxation heritage and long heritage is also something valuable for someone.
Interesting. Do you think that's something unique to Hungary or in Europe? Because I've never heard
I don't know
of that. Interesting.
I don't know if it's only Hungary or somewhere else.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay. Wow. Fascinating.
Yeah.
How long did that whole process take to sort of sell and dissolve?
6 months.
Oh, wow. So you kept it for 6 months, and then it took 6 months again to sell it?
Yeah. We were still providing services.
Okay.
So I was selling services to companies to take care of their employees. There were certain regulations in Hungary that you have to offer above a certain number of employees. You have to offer medical services and regular yearly checks. And also there were the management checkings. And so we could sell those services too.
Yeah.
And it was easy because you go to a location, you do the service, you make the invoice, and that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. So the company was still running because, I had a lot of expenses on the employees. And so I had to do something.
Of course.
Find out something. But I knew already that it was not the future. We couldn't improve, we couldn't develop, we couldn't launch new services, and then that makes no sense.
Yeah.
I didn't want to keep it on the level where it was.
For sure. That makes sense.
Yeah. And then maybe the other experience, which would be interesting for your audience who are just at the beginning of the journey, was the mass ventil project. That was a mass ventilation that was really from scratch. It was COVID, and we faced the problem that there were not enough ventilators.
Okay.
And when
this is in Hungary,
there was also in Hungary, and then it was first in Hungary, and there were not enough ventilators, and then when the state bought a lot of ventilators, there were not enough personnel to run and operate those ventilators. So there was anyway a problem, how to keep the people alive.
Yeah.
And then there was this invention, the mass ventilation system. There was a technical invention. It was not parts to inventing it, so I took over growing the business, growing the community. We grew a community around this invention, and we asked for help. And it was... Also, it was challenged, but it was also easy because in that situation, a lot of people wanted to help.
Okay.
So a lot of people offered volunteer helping, engineers, companies offered really free help. Also, we got money from companies to develop the equipment itself, a lot of money. And so it was in that sense, it was a little bit easier than normally.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the time was very pressuring.
Of course.
And then we built a community. Then it was my part to build the community, to run the social media and the campaigns and get fundings. And then the technical team was doing the other part. And then it was also sold after COVID, because the difficulty on that market or that business was that during COVID, the healthcare regulations were not so strict because there was an emergency situation. But the healthcare is very strictly regulated by the states. And then once the direct emergency was over, you really had to face strict regulations and also how you come to the market. It's a long process. You have to stand a lot of tests, and it's a long process and really very expensive process, to say. So we believe we couldn't do that. We need a professional medical company, and that was the goal.
When you say we, did you start this with someone else? Was it like a partnership?
Yeah, it was then later a big partnership.
Okay, but you started it on your own. Was it sort of your idea?
It was started basically in the living room.
Oh wow!
But it turned out to be a whole community project. It was a university project.
Wow. With CEU or a different institution?
It was not CEU. Back then I was not part of CEU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it was a university project at Óbuda University in Budapest. So they took over the management of the project, and they took over the negotiations and everything. Finally, on that,
Yeah.
But that was from scratch, and that was really like when you start to build. It was not even a minimum viable product, really.
Yeah.
It was just like a demo thing.
Was it a technology?
It was technology.
Okay. And what was it doing, if you could describe? Yeah. What did it do?
Basically, the idea was that you have one equipment. You can connect to this equipment several people. So you have one personnel dealing with several people.
At the same time, yeah.
Yeah, and it has to be safe, and it has to be based on a lot of software operations. You're getting a lot of feedback on the customer, so that the person who handles the situation gets a lot of people on the screen, a lot of data on the screen, and knows immediately where to act, where to just follow up. And it should have been also, it must be also safe at the same time, because if you have several people connected to the same equipment, then you have there's a danger of that they get the disease from each other, then more, and also there is a danger that the personnel gets the disease. So it's a lot of safety which is around that.
For sure.
Yeah.
But at that time, those kind of systems were in short demand, and
I mean, it was just the beginning.
High demand, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, it was just the beginning, and back then people tried to get spare parts from everyday stores. They were not even spare parts from the medical industry, because they didn't. It was like, I remember we ordered something, and by the time you clicked, you got your Visa card and you clicked on ordering, it was gone.
Oh.
And shelves were empty. I mean, everyone was in panic and buying. Yeah.
How did you manage the supply then?
I mean, it was then you lost that part, and then you had to find out some new solution.
Wow.
And then you had to act quickly
before it's gone again. Yeah.
But it's just for the first steps.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But the challenge was in this. If I consider the business side, the challenge was really building the community from scratch. Really let your voice heard.
How did you build the community?
We started on social media.
Okay.
On Facebook, back then mainly, and we just posted a lot, and it grew organically.
Wow.
And all the people involved used their own networks. And once we reached a certain follower number, then it was automatically growing faster and faster. So that was, and also the media was very much excited about that. There were podcasters who were interested in it. So I think that was then I mean, it was an everyday topic, and it was an
Yeah.
emergency situation, and everyone was looking for solutions, and everyone was
course.
interested in
The perfect
news.
storm.
So it was kind of easier, like when you compare that, you find out the solution today, and you want to. It was a huge problem.
Yeah.
It's a huge interest.
For sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Interesting. And so did you get to actually developing it with the partners and having the product?
Yes, the company bought the ID itself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And they built a factory.
Uh-huh.
And I think now they are in the certification period.
Okay.
And they built a huge factory, actually.
In Budapest or?
In Budapest, yes.
Okay.
Close to Budapest, yeah. So it was taken from there, from the point. So I wonder when the first piece will really serve. But it's really long, Imagine it was 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it's normal in the medical industry. It's normal.
Definitely.
It's
For
normal
safety and things like that.
for safety reasons.
Yeah.
It's normal that it takes so long. So I would be curious to see the first one.
Yeah.
First piece sold.
Same. That's very, very interesting.
Yeah. And also what we did back then, or what I did, I tried to get also the international interest.
Mm-hmm.
So I contacted the Hungarian embassy and consulates in different countries to help us spread the word.
Yeah.
And find people who could fund the ID and who are interested in buying or collaborating, developing further the ID. And
did that help?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I
would never think to do that.
I was also very surprised. Yeah, but the consulates and the embassies, they were very, very helpful. Really.
Wow,
they were very helpful. They spread the word.
Mm-hmm.
We got international contact. It was really a great experience. I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
I was just cold calling and trying my best. And I got a lot of help, really.
Okay.
Yeah, that was working very well.
That is really good.
Yeah.
And what were the challenges during this whole process? Because it seems like it was intense. You had a lot of success building the community and you were able to get funding and involvement. But also it sounds like there might be challenges having so many people involved at the same time in such an intense period of time as well in the world. How did you manage that? Were there any other challenges?
Exactly. That was the advantage and the challenge at the same time, that there were a lot of people involved and everyone tried to contribute. And then everyone tried to, of course, see the results and wanted to do it also on business level later. I mean, they contributed during the COVID time and they hoped for a business on long term. That's normal. I mean, that's okay. But then there were too many people involved, too many different interests. And that was difficult. And then finally, the university took over everything, and then they managed the rest of the process. Okay. And I mean, it has also, I mean, in challenges, you have always winners and some losers, and it's not a convenient topic, so to say.
Yeah.
It's really sad that there were a lot of people helping, and they couldn't jump into the business part later on. But there was really no way to include everyone. And after you take it to the next level, after a professional medical company takes it over, and Medicover took it over, it's a great big company. They have a lot of compliance regulations, even regarding suppliers. And it was not possible to use the same suppliers like we used at the beginning. That's a pity, but it's simply not possible because of compliance reasons. They have
different
the
standards
ICU
they have to reach,
regulations. So it was, so it also has some challenges when you take something from the beginning to a professional level. Then you lose a lot of people on the way. But that was it. You couldn't do it differently.
No. And what was your experience working with the university on something like this? Because I've heard very mixed reviews on working with research institutions on startup ideas. And I know you still work for one now, so you may not be able to be as honest as you can. But what you can share, I do find that really interesting, because some people say it slows them down. They feel like they're creatively not able to push the boundaries. Other people find that really helpful. And then there's like ownership components as well of like who owns what, and how did you find that process?
I was not managing this.
Okay.
So I would, the university was very helpful and definitely had more power than an initiative group. So they could do it much more professionally than the initial team could have done it before, So I think you didn't have any other choice to do that. So either you keep it for yourself, or either if you wish to see it as a professional product, as a professional service, and you wish to see it to grow, then at some point you have to hand it over.
You do, yeah. That's true.
Yeah, and it makes sense.
Yeah. Because they have the resources as well, the connections, the manpower.
Yeah. So different groups have different professionalism in different phases, you know? So some are better getting from 0 to 1. Others are better from getting to 1 to 100, and others from 100 to the sky,
Yeah.
And you have to know yourself and your capacities, your limitations, your interest, your passion, and then you have to find out in which phase you wish to contribute and which phase you can contribute.
For sure.
And basically the final goal is to get the product out of the market, with or without you, but see your vision to manifest, know. That's the most important thing. And sometimes you lose a little bit on it, sometimes you win a little bit on it, but the biggest win is if you see your vision to be manifested.
Yeah, that's true. And the reality is it's much better to own 5% share of something that's really big and worth a lot than owning 100% share of something that's small and not really profitable. But
for sure, and this and specifically this project was not about profit. So in other cases, yes. In this particular cases, it was not about profit. It was about helping, and as long as the product helps, that's achieving the goal. That's achieving the goal. Yeah, exactly.
Did you consider partnering with other types of institutions outside, I guess, the research institution at the very start?
No.
Or that just made the most sense.
No, because the inventor team, the technical team was part of that university, so it couldn't be
that
differently.
Makes sense. Yeah,
and that was normal. I mean, they supported also the project. They gave place. They gave a lot of resource. So it was normal.
Wow. Okay. And how long did you work on this for before it fully moved on to the next stage?
Approximately 8 months.
Okay, wow. Sounds like an intense 8 months.
Yeah, it was an intense 8 months,
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly, yeah.
Would you do it again?
Yes, I would. Definitely, I would.
Okay.
I didn't regret anything.
Yeah.
Probably I would do the same way.
Okay, that's good.
Probably I would make faster decisions.
Okay.
But I think I was good like it was. And basically I don't much look back in the past. I more like looking forward what's next. But definitely the experience and the learning is with you. So you change via this experience. But I think it was okay. It was a lot of learning. Challenges help you to grow. Yeah, so it's okay. True. And I also believe that I can consider those as failures because I didn't sell the companies with a lot of profit to do another investment with that profit. I did sell those companies or the projects or whatever you call them because I didn't want to deal with them anymore. But I really do believe that failure is not the opposite of success, but part of it. Yeah. And so it really helped me to grow. I learned a lot of nice people along the way. They are still, many of them are still with me. Wow. And then so it was really worth
the experience.
And it was exciting.
Yeah. Did your experience from the first medical company help you with this second one?
A little bit in terms of managing people and managing interests.
Okay.
And managing motivation, so to say.
Okay.
Because first, in the case of the medical company, I was so fed up with all this human part of the business. Yeah. I really thought I would like to quit and sell everything and work only with softwares in the future. Online businesses, no people employed.
Yes.
But then that was back then, and then I learned that business is really all about people, and it's all about relationships, and
you can't escape it.
You have to just simply develop those skills.
Yeah.
And I think I managed that part, and that part I used later on.
Yeah.
And since then, whatever I do, I really use the interpersonal skills.
Yeah.
That's something that I learned along the way. Because basically in the corporate world, I mean, it helps you, but it's not necessary because everyone knows what to do. Everyone has his or her responsibility. Of course, there are also conflicts, but they are not on the level
of,
and there are a lot of people in different departments, so they can always, you have always a replacement, so to say, but not in a small team.
No, because you have a hierarchy in corporate. But in
a small team, you have no replacement. So if two people are fighting, then the business might be over.
Yeah.
So you can't afford that for you. So you have to handle that before it gets serious. And that's something I learned really there in these two examples.
That makes a lot of sense. Something that you mentioned that I've been reflecting on in the background is about exiting and knowing the right time to leave something and when to sort of move on, and acknowledging your strengths and capabilities and where you are happy to grow and where you might need assistance, etc. Because part of startups and businesses is that all businesses have a lifespan. Rarely do companies last forever, and the very long-lasting companies often evolve. So they might start in automotive or something, and they might still have the same name, but they've evolved as a company into different sectors or industries. So I do find that exit component very fascinating, and knowing when the time has come and looking at your opportunities of selling, of transforming, closing it down. So that's quite interesting.
And whatever I do, I would do it like keeping in mind the exit, even if I do not exit. Keeping in mind the exit, so that there are certain points where you decide, shall I exit? Shall I sell it? Or shall I move on to the next phase? And you have to always have the choice to make this choice on your own. And to have this choice, you have to build structures and systems so that you can hand it over anytime you wish so.
That's true.
And you have to do it as long as you enjoy it.
Often they say that you should have an exit plan when you start a business, because if you have that in mind, as you said, you can structure it in the way that if your exit plan is to sell it, you make sure that you have the right processes, systems, and you develop the business in a strategic way where it's set up to be able to be sold. So that makes a lot of sense.
But I think it should be fun.
Did you have a lot of fun?
I think so. I mean, it's challenging, and there are night works and stuff like that, but as long as you enjoy it, as long as you don't feel it as a sacrifice, it makes sense. And then when you start not to enjoying it, then you have to think about your next move.
Definitely. And so what's next for you now? Do you think you see yourself trying another startup, being part of something else, or are you more happy in the corporate/academic world now? What's next for you?
I mean, I do always something on the side.
I knew it.
I just can't change myself. Doing something, I mean, from 0 to 1 to starting something is always very exciting. I mean, it's the most risky phase of any businesses, but it's the most exciting part, I think. And there are a lot of ideas around me, and there are a lot of friends who would like to move on and do business and need help on the business side. So I'm always ready to jump in. For sure.
And this is a bit off topic, but it's worth asking you because you've had experience developing startups in Hungary and now you're living in Vienna and Austria. How do you compare the two, and what's the startup scene like? Are they both conducive to encouraging startups and entrepreneurship, or is that something that's still developing? What's been your experience like?
If I compare Hungary with Vienna now, in Vienna, I mean, it's challenging because I did it in Hungary 15 years ago, including for 10 years. So in the last 5 years, I didn't do anything there, and I was involved in Vienna. So I don't know how much things changed there. You
that's
know.
true.
But if I compare what I knew from Hungary back then and here in Vienna, for the first phase, you get a lot of support, financial support, mentoring support.
Wow, mentoring.
Mentoring
Wow.
support. You get a lot of support, and everything is free to access. They really want to encourage people to innovate and bring new ideas and start companies and grow companies in Vienna and then employ people in Vienna and pay tax in Vienna and stuff like that. You know. We didn't have that support back then, so it was challenging. On the other hand, in Hungary, there were a lot of passionate people, enthusiastic about entrepreneurship and starting something, doing something. And in Vienna, sure, if you go to, there are communities where you go and you find the same passion. But basically, I think the level is a little bit lower.
Okay.
The motivation towards entrepreneurship is lower than in Hungary.
Okay.
People prefer to be employed.
Yeah.
It's very safe in Vienna. You are very much protected, so you are not so motivated to move into the entrepreneurial world. In Hungary back then, it was a huge motivation.
Okay. Yeah.
To build something from scratch and grow and make a big deal or profit or whatever, you know.
It does seem like there's a cultural difference in risk taking between the two countries. Yeah. Interesting. Well, was there anything else you wanted to add? Any advice you'd give someone else starting businesses now that you haven't mentioned?
I don't know. It's always you know, a lot of people want to start a business.
Of course.
A lot of people try it, and I think it's a great thing. I would encourage everyone to take this experience, even if the business fails. There's a lot of opportunity to grow via this experience, and I think having this entrepreneurial mindset is getting more and more important also in the corporate world, even in the academic world.
For sure.
To have your own initiatives.
And to act on it.
On it, to look for new ideas permanently, to look for improvement. Because I think anything else AI will do, you know, sooner or later, anything else. So you have to use your human brain and act on it and really get the most out of this.
Definitely. That's a good point. I've never really linked the entrepreneurship side to the corporate world because it can support you in your corporate world, because people often see them as two separate channels. Either I go corporate or entrepreneurship, but you're right. It shows initiative of you having an idea, acting on it, following it through. It might not work out, but I think that can really help you in the corporate world as well.
I think the corporate world is very useful. Many of my friends who now are having their own companies, they started in the corporate world. It's simply because they are professional. You learn professionalism. You learn think in systems, in structures, in big visions, and you take it with you.
Of course. Yeah, it makes sense. That's true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. What a whirlwind. It's been very fascinating hearing about the two very different experiences, but they have a lot of overlap, and for sharing all of those ideas and lessons learned. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks.